Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, I'm going to give you the number one factor in your children being well-adjusted post-divorce or post-breakup. Okay. Children that live in, that have two different homes that they're going back and forth between. There is one factor that we see in the studies over and over and over that has the biggest impact on how well-adjusted that they're going to be. Before we talk about that, let me just remind you, if you like this content, don't forget to hit like on the video and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. My understanding is about 70% of you watching the video are not subscribed, and that helps me. It helps my content reach more people. And if you're going through this, you know how tough it is. You know how badly people need help with this. So please subscribe. That helps push me out more to people under YouTube's algorithm. Okay. When we talk about factors in children being well adjusted, one of the things that studies look at is, kind of the typical things that we're all trying to accomplish as parents. We want to have children that have good coping mechanisms, that aren't promiscuous, that make good grades, that are kind, caring human beings, aren't in jail, don't, don't beat people up, don't steal, don't, just all the kind of natural things that, obviously our goals are usually a little bit beyond that, right? But kind of the basic things is what I'm talking about for the purposes of the different studies and things that I have read over the years on this issue. And they all say the same thing, that the number one factor in this is whether or not the parents have conflict with each other and how much conflict they have with each other. So as you can imagine, the more extreme the conflict, the worse it is for these sort of outcomes, these sort of parameters that we're talking about in raising our children. And when you can start to put that together and really recognize how much damage your conflict with the other parent is doing to your children, I think that sometimes is one of the first things that enable us to get emotional control, or at least I should say it was true for me. Like, honestly, you guys, I put my older son in particular, I don't know if, I guess in the middle. I don't know if in the middle is really the right word, but I'm more sort of like used him as my confidant. I talked to him about more things than I should have. I overshared. I did all of that because me and his dad were having such high level of conflict that, I guess I, probably wanted him on my side or whatever I was feeling in that moment. And I was angry at his dad and I wanted him to be angry at his dad too. And that wasn't conscious. I didn't sit down and go, oh, well, I'm angry and I want him to be angry too. It wasn't conscious. I was just emotional and I was reacting from that. And so his dad and I were having a lot of conflict when I really got to the point where I said, wow, this is really impacting my child. My child went through a lot of struggles through his high school years because of this situation. And when I really got to the point where I realized how much of a struggle that was, it really started to cause me to inspect my own behavior more and to do more and more things to try to disengage with his dad. And this is why I talk about all the things of don't have face-to-face interaction with them. Do everything through a parenting app. Draw your boundaries. Don't be in the same space. Don't interact. Because the first line of defense that we're trying to get to is elimination of that conflict. And I think where a lot of people are trying to go in the very beginning is they have this concept in their head of, oh, I need to cooperatively co-parent, right? This is what we hear the courts talk about. This is something that's thrown at us from day one is you need to cooperate, you need to cooperate, you need to cooperate. So we're thinking of this from a cooperative co-parenting perspective. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. And so we're trying to respond in the ways we think we need to because we're trying to be cooperative in that way. And we think that's good. And that's what the court will want us to do and all of these things. The problem is that if your attempts at cooperative co-parenting result in conflict with your ex, which 99.9% of the time with a narcissistic person, they do, dare I say 100? I mean, really, it's almost impossible to cooperatively co-parent with a narcissistic person. So when we're trying to do that, we're actually making it worse, because the end result of trying to cooperatively co-parent with a narcissist is conflict, which is the very worst thing for your children. So your children are much better off if you just disengage from it and you just minimize your interaction. So you may not be being this high level of cooperation, but at least you're not sinking to this very low level of conflict. And I think that what happens is, in the beginning, we're trying to get to this high level of cooperation. And because that's what we're pushing for, the conflict, because of the freshness and the newness and the lack of emotional healing and learning techniques and all the different things that come into play, haven't happened yet. What happens is that attempt at that really high level of cooperation ends up sinking us down into this pit of conflict. And so if we can really disengage and draw the boundaries and just at least create neutrality, right? And that's what the disengagement will do, is it will at least create primarily neutrality. That's going to be far better for your kids than you pushing for this goal up here that only lands you down here. Okay, so this is sort of second best. Now, eventually, will you get to here? Maybe, maybe not. I will tell you guys that I am 20 years out and I'm not here. I might be here only because I don't really have to interact with him very much. But honestly, we're not typically in the same space a lot. Last time we were in the same space was when my oldest son got married 4 or 5 years ago. We've not been in the same space since that time. So it's pretty rare that we're in the same space. The main goal is just not to have that conflict happen. And I think that that concept of cooperative co-parenting can almost be a headwind for us, because it's actually striving for that potential is actually making the whole situation worse. And this is where the concept of parallel parenting comes in. A lot of times people haven't heard of that when I talk about it, but parallel parenting is a form of co-parenting with a high conflict person that was derived from a term that they use to describe children's play that's called parallel play. Okay, children that are under the age of 5 typically parallel play. In other words, they don't take 2 cars and like interact with each other with the cars, or take 2 dolls and interact with each other with the dolls, or take 2 soldiers and interact with that. They don't do it that way. They have their own thing, their own car, their own doll, their own soldier, their own, whatever their toy is. And they're playing side by side with them, but they're not interacting, right? So that's where the term parallel comes from. And when we talk about parallel parenting, it's the same thing. It's like you stay in your lane, you do you, you let the other parent do them, and you really don't overlap to the extent possible. I mean, any more than you absolutely have to. Now, I don't tell people to go into court and say, oh, I want a parallel parent or something like that. You don't generally use those terms. The court wants you to cooperate. Again, back to that cooperative co-parenting. So we kind of have to give the illusion of trying to be cooperative while on a practical day-to-day level doing the parallel parenting, so that we're at least not sinking into the pit of conflict and creating a worst case scenario for our children. That's kind of the goal. If you'd like to learn more about parallel parenting, there is a great book. It's written by a child custody evaluator and therapist named Philip Stahl, Stahl. It's called Parenting After Divorce. It's real easy. It's a pretty easy read. It's a small book. It's an older book. I don't think you can actually even get it electronically. It's a great book on parallel parenting and kind of setting out those principles. I don't know Philip Stahl. I don't have any kind of, kickback or relationship, or there's nothing like that. This happens to be a book that I've read that I think lays out those concepts very simply. But again, the key to this whole thing is if you're in court and you're dealing with that, you want to be able to give the illusion of trying to co-parent through the way that you're dealing with your ex and the way you're communicating and all those things, while actually on a practical level utilizing those types of techniques of the parallel parenting, and also obviously the narcissistic techniques of gray rock and all that kind of thing in combination to keep you out of the conflict for the sake of your children. If you'd like to learn more about these techniques and how to utilize them effectively in your situation, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page. Actually, I think there's a video on that page where you can learn more about my coaching programs, gives you the option to enroll in some of the programs. And if you need more information, there's a link there where you can book a call as well. So I hope that serves you, and I'll see you guys next time.